Morning all, thanks for joining. My name's Pat Harrison. I'm a specialist solution architect here at Red Hat, which basically means I do technical pre-sales, and I'm focused on Ansible in my role. And so I cover UK and Ireland and try and help customers understand what Ansible is, what it does, and how they can adopt it. And in this session, we're going to look at how we can use Ansible for self-service automation. So kind of the journey that we might go on and a lot of customers go on. I'm going to try and keep the slides fairly light. So I think I've got a handful of slides. I'm fed up of talking through slides. I'm sure people have fatigued looking at slides and watching webinars like this. So I'll try and do more of a demos kind of walkthrough and less on the slides. And so, like I say, we're going to go on this journey of self-service automation from kind of the ground up. So we'll look at the automation language of Ansible, and then how we can go and give people click button automation. If everyone could just go on mute as well, that would be great. I don't know if you can do that, Mark, for us as well, to mute anyone. So we'll get going then. So like I say, just a few slides to frame the Ansible automation platform that Red Hat have available, and we're going to work our way through these layers and build up this picture. So we've got a single product at Red Hat called the Ansible Automation Platform, which gives you really everything that you need to automate in an enterprise environment. And like I say, we're going to work our way through these layers, and we're going to start with Ansible Engine. And Ansible Engine is the command line interface into Ansible, describes the Ansible language. We'll then move into Ansible Tower and how we can put controls around our automation. And then finally, we'll look at some of the SaaS offerings we've got in terms of, and for our use case here specifically, of self-service automation. So when we think about Ansible and what it can do, so Ansible is a really powerful yet very simple automation tool, which we can use to do lots of things across our data center. So don't think of Ansible, if you're new to it, as a Red Hat automation tool that we use to automate Red Hat Enterprise Linux. We can use Ansible to automate across our entire data center. And so when we look at the breadth and depth of Ansible, we are looking at a whole bunch of use cases around things like provisioning, configuration management, application deployments, and so on and so on. But we're talking about doing those over a huge breadth of platforms. So when we talk provisioning, yes, we could be talking about using Ansible to automate VMware provisioning or AWS provisioning, but we could also be talking about provisioning VLANs on a Cisco switch. We could be talking about provisioning a new load balancer. We could be talking about provisioning firewall rules. So like I say, the beauty of Ansible is it's this very simple language, but it's so powerful that we can automate across our entire data center. Like I say, not a Red Hat specific tool. It is cross-platform, cross-data center, and we can cover a huge number of use cases with it. And then as we go through this walkthrough today in this demonstration, we're going to go from building up our very simple use case of provisioning virtual machines, and we're going to do it in VMware. And we're going to then look at some of the challenges that you might face if you just take kind of Ansible, the command line utility, and then you try and move that and offer that as a self-service automation capability. We're going to look at some of the challenges you might face there. And then we'll look at how Ansible Tower can try and address some of those issues to provide us with things like push button automation, to provide us with the right controls, logging and auditing. So that's really what we're going to be working our way through today. And it's really this journey that we're going to try and go on as we go from, and this is what a lot of customers are doing. They're going from this left-hand side where we're standalone, where we're just picking up Ansible for the first time. We're trying to understand what it can do. Will it fulfill my use cases? You know, is it easy? Can I adopt this thing? And that's where we're going to start. We're then going to move into this extended approach where we're going to provide a platform for executing this automation with the right controls around it. And then we're going to move a little bit further on into this integrated state where like I say, this is where a lot of customers are trying to get to, or are already getting to this place where we're fully integrating our automation platform and our automation capability with existing tooling in our enterprise, whether that be ServiceNow, whether that be some other ITSM, whether that be through CI/CD pipelines, whether I'm mapping that into my existing change control processes. That's ultimately where I want to get to, where I can hand off automation capabilities to end users as catalog items, where they can just request them, they're fulfilled with all of the right controls in place and all of the right integrations. So that's where we're going to be going today. So let me just put the slides aside for a minute as we go and look at this standalone approach and how we start to build up this self-service capability and how we go on this journey. So let me just move my slides away and we'll go to the command line. So Ansible, like I say, is a command line driven utility, or Ansible engine is anyway. And so we need to learn the Ansible language. We need to learn how to become self-sufficient with Ansible, how to take what's already there in the community and how to use that, and how to start building up this picture. Because ultimately, before we can give someone a button to push to request and fulfill something, we've got to provide some automation underlying that. And we do that with Ansible engine, and we typically do that by writing this automation language and starting to offer some of these things. So let's take a look at an example here, which will provision virtual machines in VMware. And so Ansible, this is what we call a playbook in Ansible. It is a list of tasks that I want Ansible to go and fulfill for me. And we're going to work our way through this example. If it's the first time you've seen Ansible, don't worry, we're going to walk through this. It is a very simple language. If you've seen it before, go and get a coffee and come back to me. So we're using YAML here to write these playbooks. So indentation is important. There are tools like VS Code that are going to help you get this indentation right. I'm just using Vi here because that works fine for me. So what we're doing here is naming everything within this automation job here. So I want people to be able to come and read this. I want nice friendly names in here to explain what I'm doing. So here I am saying I want to create a VM from a template in VMware. The next line here, I'm telling Ansible what it should go and target. So if I was writing a playbook here to do Linux patching, the hosts that I would be targeting would be a group of hosts, an individual host. So it might be myserver.example.com, or it might be a group of hosts like my web servers. In this instance, all I need to do is get Ansible to make an API call to VMware to clone a template and provision that template. So I don't need it to connect to anything. I can run this locally on the local Ansible control node, and I can get Ansible to go and make an API call into VMware to go and do my provisioning. And next here, this gather facts, just all I'm saying here is don't gather facts here. So by default, Ansible would gather facts from the device it connects to. So again, in my Linux patching example, Ansible would by default gather facts from that endpoint. So it would work out IP addresses, MAC addresses, the number of disks on that machine, what distribution of Linux, you know, is it Red Hat Enterprise Linux, is it Ubuntu, what version, so is it RHEL 7, RHEL 8, so it gathers all of that data, and we can use that in our automation run to then maybe steer decisions to say, well, if you're RHEL 7, go and do this, if you're RHEL 8, go and do this, and we can start to use that data. So it can be useful. Again, in my instance, all I'm doing is getting Ansible to make API calls to VMware, so I don't need to gather a load of facts about this local host. It's going to be meaningless. And then we're into this task section here where we're basically telling Ansible, right, here's the list of things I need you to go and do. And it will do these sequentially. And again, naming it very similar to the first description here of the overall play. But again, I'm just saying this task is going to create a VM from a template. And when we run this, we'll see that that's what's going to be displayed on the screen. And here's the key thing now. Here, I'm calling on a module in Ansible, and this is the VMware_guest module. There are around 3,600 of these modules in the version of Ansible that we're looking at here today, Ansible 2.9. And so this is the beauty of Ansible. This is the power of it. There is a huge community around Ansible. It's a top 10 project in GitHub for numbers of contributors. And so all of this community is writing Ansible capabilities for me in the form of these modules. So I don't need to program. I don't need to know how to program. This is the batteries included. I take one of these modules that already exists. I give it some simple key value pairs, which we're going to go through in a second. And that will then give me my automation capability. So when we talk about this community, Red Hat are writing obviously content here for Ansible, but a huge number of partners for all of the platforms in your data center. So NetApp, Pure Storage, Cisco, Google, Microsoft, F5, Checkpoint. All of these people are writing, all of these partners are writing Ansible content so that I don't need to program. I don't need to make Ansible a really complex tool. It's been done for me. Someone's done that clever work in the background. We can provide the support and enterprise wrap around this content. And all you need to do is write this very simple automation language where you pick a module and you give it these key value pairs. So where do we work out these key value pairs? How do I work out what I can do with Ansible and what these key value pairs are? Because when we look at this, there's quite a lot of parameters here I'm passing into this VMware guest module. If it's the first time you've looked at Ansible, you might look at this and think, well, there's quite a lot there for me to learn. How do I know what all this stuff is? Well, the reality is it's incredibly simple because I'm a simple chap. And so there's no intelligence here. So we go to docs.ansible.com. We go and look at the Ansible core documentation. And as I said, we're on Ansible 2.9 here. So I'm going to switch to the 2.9 documentation page. And what you'll find here, I'll make this a little bit bigger actually, is a module index here on the left-hand side. And like I say, 3,600 or so things that Ansible can do out of the box, 3,600 of these individual modules that do different things for us, broken into categories here on Ansible, docs.ansible.com. So I can go and look at Windows modules if that's something I was interested in automating. And I can go and see all of the things that we can do to a Windows host. And for example, if the thing that I wanted to automate was installing or uninstalling a Windows feature, great. There it is for me. I can click on this module and it's going to tell me what this module does. It's going to give me all of those parameters that it accepts. So here's those parameters that I need to give key value pairs for. And the beauty of this is at the bottom, there are examples here that I can literally just copy and paste. So if I want to install the IIS feature, I can just take this, copy and paste it, and away we go. Maybe it's a different feature, in which case all I need to do is change this name parameter here to whatever it is I want to install. And so you'll see lots of examples for each module of different things like installing features, installing sub-features, and so on. So let's go back to our cloud, our VMware provisioning example. We were looking at the VMware guest module. The VMware module is listed under the cloud modules. And again, we've got capability across all of the major public clouds. So Amazon, I could scroll forever on this page across all of the different things we can do on Amazon and Google and Azure and OpenStack and so on. Let me jump straight down to the VMware section of this. And again, a whole bunch of stuff we can do with VMware. We can manage VMware itself. So we can manage your VMware infrastructure, your clusters, your DRS settings, your HA settings. We can manage the hosts. We can manage the virtual networking. But again, I'm interested in managing a VMware guest. And the documentation is always consistent. It tells me what the module does. So this one's telling me it can create machines from templates. It can power them on and off, blah, 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 blah. And here are all those key value pairs that I can give it. So here are all the parameters it accepts. So for example, I can tell it which cluster to deploy my VM to. I can pass customization information if I want to inject host names, DNS names, servers, and things like that. I can pass in the data store that I want to provision it to. I can pass in a list of disks that I want it to add and the size of them and whether they should be thin provisioned and so on. And again, at the bottom of this page, we will see examples again. And this is pretty much what I've done. I've taken one of these examples and I've pasted it into my automation playbook. And so this is exactly what I'm doing. I'm cloning a VM from a template and I'm customizing it. Grab that, copy and paste it, and change some of these key value pairs. That's really as easy as it gets. So let's come back to this, my example here. So we can see here, the first four parameters that I'm specifying are all to do with connecting. And so terrible practice here where I've got things in plain text. That's fine. We're going to look at that and address that later on. But for now, I just want it to be very easy to read and easy to understand what's going on. And then you can see here, key value pairs. So what's the name of the VM I want to spin up? What is the template I need to clone it from? Which cluster should I deploy this to? What folder in VMware should I deploy it to? The hardware spec, so number of CPUs and memory, 2 CPUs, 2 gig of RAM. The IP address that I want to inject into it, I want to give it a static address and put a specific IP in there. And so you can see here, I've just taken that example and customized it for myself. And then really quickly, we're on to the next task in this play where once I provision it, I want to make sure SSH comes up because I may want to log into the guest after I've deployed it and do some customization within the guest and install packages or whatever I might want to do. So here's another module. Like I said, 3,600 of them. We're looking at 2 so far, VMware guest and wait for. And the wait for module just waits for, in my case, it's going to wait for port 22 to be available on this host. And then the final thing, because Ansible can do multi-tier, multi-platform orchestration and automation, and I can do provisioning and then post-deployment configuration. Here's an example of, I've deployed a VM. I now want to run it, add it into this running play to make it available for me to then do things into it. So again, the add host module will add this newly provisioned host into this automation run so that I can then, within a single run, start automating against it. Because I don't want to run one thing to provision and then stop and then run another thing to then do post-provisioning. I want to have an end-to-end provisioning capability. So add host is one of the ways that we can add new hosts into the play as we're running it. Okay, so let's just quickly go into my VMware environment. Is it that one? Yeah, so here's my VMware environment. Hopefully this is coming through okay. And I will pause at a couple of points for questions. If you have any other questions, throw them in the chat and I'll pick them up as I pause a couple of times, or my colleague Phil will help to answer some of those. So we should hopefully see in a minute that I've got this Tech Talk folder here. We're going to be using that to spin up our VM. So we're going to run Ansible Playbook here from the command line. We're going to specify our playbook and we're going to have our fingers crossed that this works. And so remember those names that I put in my playbook. This is why they're important. They're going to be output to the screen. If I didn't put a name in here, it wouldn't be obvious at all what is happening here. So we want the names in there. This almost forms a documentation of what this play is doing as we run through it. And what we should hopefully see here in the tasks in VMware is we've now got our VM that has been spun up. Where is the tasks I want to see? So we've cloned our virtual machine here from our template. We've now powered on our virtual machine. And if I go back to my virtual machines, and I think I've gone too large here on the screen, but that's fine. And go back to my folder, we should see my virtual machine called Ansible VM is powering on. And it's going to do the customization for me. So it's going to inject the IP address that I asked it to inject. It's going to inject the DNS server I asked it to inject. And to do that, all I need is VMware tools in my template and Perl, because that's how customization happens with Linux guests in VMware. If you're provisioning Windows guests, you just need VMware tools to do the customization. But we can see here, I asked for 2 CPUs, I asked for 2 gig of RAM, that's what I've got. And we should be able to launch our console and take a look at our VM. It does a reboot to do the customization. Hopefully it's already done that. And here is my newly provisioned VM with the IP address that I asked for, 1050.027, and hopefully the right DNS server that I asked it to inject, which is in there. And so really, with a simple example here, we've done a nice simple VM automation here with Ansible. And my screen's frozen. Why can't I close that? Okay. And if we come back to our play, which we ran, we can see the VM was created. We waited for SSH to come up, and then we added the host into the play. We didn't actually do anything with it at this point, but we ran through that. And so if we just consider what we've done there, so we've we can see the power of Ansible here and the simplicity of it, hopefully, where, you know, it wouldn't take you too long to get to the point where you're automating your VM provisioning. But then how do we move that from what we're doing here, where it's great for me to be able to run this, to me handing this off to others to run? And what are some of the things we need to consider? So firstly, this is command line driven. Is this an acceptable way of doing self-service automation? Is it acceptable for me to expect a business user, maybe a non-technical user, to SSH to something to then run commands to do this? Probably not for most organizations. We've obviously got some challenges here with credential management, because, you know, usernames and passwords, how am I going to manage those? Plain text like this is obviously a no-no. I could encrypt these at rest using something like Ansible Vault, which would mean that they're not stored at rest, stored in plain text at rest. But then again, if I wanted to hand this off to someone else to consume, I would have to give them the keys to decrypt that Vault file. If they can decrypt it, they can look at it. If they can look at it, they've got the credentials. And now you're in this world where everyone's got your VMware credentials and they can log in and tinker, because you've just lost control of it there. Some of the other things to consider here are, this is very static. So things like names, IP addresses are hard coded in here. How are we going to parameterize those and then make them available as kind of questions for people to fill in? So when they say, give me a VM, they might say, give me RHEL 8 or Windows, or, you know, put it on this network or put it in this cluster. How am I going to prompt for all of this information I need to prompt for? And then finally, this in itself, which is, you know, the fact that I've got this output here, this isn't logged anywhere now. So how am I going to get the audit trail of who is automating, who is consuming this automation that I've written, how are they using it, how many times is it running, how many times is it failing? You know, I want to have that way of centralizing this logging. And actually, the other thing is, if I write this piece of automation and then give it to someone else to run, what actually stops them from tinkering with this and going, do you know what, I'll have that much memory and that many number of CPUs, and I'll go and change some other things in it. And again, I've lost control of this, because I might want to say that you can only have 2, 4, 8 gig of RAM. I might say you only can have 2, 4, 8 CPUs, for example. And so if I want to put those controls around it, having playbooks like this just stored locally and passing it around, again, is not gonna work for me. And then just one final point I want to make here on this is, obviously here I'm specifying static IP addresses, and then I'm using that to then poll the server after and do all that stuff. Look, this is going to be different in every organization. So if you've got an IPAM like Netbox or Infoblox, you may want to use that and automate against that. And we've got capabilities to do that, to go and get the next free IP address. You might be using DHCP, in which case you might need to just spin it up and wait and find out what address it gets. It may be a cloud platform where you just don't know what the IP is going to be until you spin it up. So that's fine. We can easily address that. What we can do is, when we run a job, we can actually register the output of this particular task. So that's what I'm doing here. I've added this register line in here, which is basically saying register the output of this task, store it in a variable called VM, and then I'm going to just simply print out the value of that variable, just so you can see the kind of information that we return when we run something like this. So I'm going to run the playbook again with our additional line in there to gather the information from our VM create. And so we can see here a couple of things. Firstly, Ansible didn't change anything here. It knew that the VM existed. It knew it was in a desired state. And so it didn't have to make changes to it. So it just comes back and says it's okay, no changes. And in fact, we can see that here, changed is false. Ansible didn't change anything, already in the desired state. But we get information back from the VMware platform here. So this module is returning things like guest tool status and the versions. It's returning things like IP addresses and MAC addresses and other information. And so actually, even if I just spun something up and wanted to wait for an IP address to be assigned, that's fine. I can gather that information from from Ansible, from the output of the task, and use that later on. And so we can see here that VM, instance, and if I scroll down, IPv4 should get me an IP address. If I just update this one more time and stick that in, so VM instance IPv4 should hopefully just print my IP address for this machine. So like I say, the different platforms will, and the different modules return different pieces of information. EC2 modules for Amazon do this, Azure modules do OpenStack. They'll return information as part of that creation and give you that information that you can use. So mine is static. If you've got something more dynamic, that's fine. We can cater for that. So let's move on then. So we've talked about some of the concerns now about moving this on the self-serve journey. So if we go back to our slide here, and I'll really quickly go back to this. We've gone through this standalone phase where we're learning the language, we're starting to automate, and we're comfortable with what Ansible can do, and we think that looks great. I now want to move across into this extended phase where I want to put controls around it and start moving on this self-service journey. So let's jump into Ansible Tower at this point. And let me log into Ansible Tower. So Ansible Tower provides a platform for executing this automation. Firstly, it gives us a UI if we want to do push button automation. So this is part of our journey where I want to get to the point where I can push a button. It also provides API integration so that actually, if I can push the button in the UI, I can also consume it via the API in Tower. But it does other things to help address some of the concerns we've got around running this stuff from the command line. So if we think that our credentials we were worried about earlier, they were in plain text, I could encrypt them, but then I've got to give keys to decrypt them. Ansible Tower can help us with this by providing credential management capability. So Ansible can handle and store all of my credential types. So I've got things like my Azure credentials in here. I've got credentials for things like vCenter, ServiceNow. I've got, you know, all sorts of credential types in here. And so Ansible will let me store all of my credentials in here, encrypt them, and keep them safe. So I'm going to add in a new credential for VMware. And we can see here built into Ansible Tower are different credential types. So it knows what to prompt us for the different credential types. I'm going to select vCenter as my credential type because that's what I want to connect to. And I'm just going to add in my vCenter host, my username, I think that's right, and my password, which is Red Hat 123. And we're going to save that, and we'll see now that this password is encrypted. It's no longer available for me to see even as the owner and administrator of this password. This is now encrypted and stored away. And so now I can give this credential to other users without giving them the key to the kingdom. They can use it within the bounds of Ansible Tower, but they can't then go off piste and start tinkering in VMware. Now, the other thing that we talked about was, you know, if I write a playbook and I just give it to someone to execute from the command line, what stops them changing it? How do I make sure I've got this secure chain of execution here where the playbook that I write is exactly what is executed in my environment? The way we do that with Ansible is we use source control, basically. So what we do is we say, store all of your playbooks, all of the variables, anything associated with your Ansible automation in source control, version it in source control, have all of the good practices that source control brings. So, you know, even if, you know, I don't trust myself, you know, I'm a fool. So who knows what rubbish I might write in an Ansible playbook. I don't want that just going into production without it being tested, without it being peer reviewed. So it controls the quality of what I'm writing and makes sure that what I'm producing for others to consume is good and has been tested. And it also ensures then that when someone consumes it, I know it's definitely coming from that trusted source, which is source control, and it's coming from my production branch of source control. And so I know exactly what is in this playbook. I know exactly what people are consuming. And there's no way of having like this man in the middle attack where someone takes my playbook that I've written and I've got all controls in it, and they start tinkering and editing it and breaking things. So I've got a source control repository here with my, which is just in GitHub, which you can look at if you really want to. My automation is now living within source control, so it's versioned, and like I say, it's in the production branch here. And so it's exactly the same language. Nothing's changed here. It's just in source control. You'll note here that I've removed my VMware credentials because I don't need to worry about those anymore. Ansible Tower is going to inject my credentials into the job for me, so I don't need to specify anything there. And the other thing I'm doing is I'm starting to parameterize some of these inputs. So it's no good having all of these things as static inputs. And I've only parameterized 2, 3, 4 of these inputs. So we've got an example. But things like the VM name is no longer hard-coded. It is now in these curly brackets, which means it's a variable. The amount of memory and CPU, again, are variables. This means that I can actually accept inputs into it. So when I run this now, I can say pass in a variable for VM name, pass in a variable for CPUs and memory. And of course, in a real environment, you were probably going to want to pass in variables for the template, the cluster you deployed to, the folder, you know, the network it's being deployed to, all of these things you're probably going to want to parameterize. I've just parameterized a few of these things. So let's go back into Ansible Tower here. And my tabs are misbehaving. Here we go. So what we do with Ansible Tower is we create what's called a project. A project is that mapping into source control. And it's really as simple as that. Give it a name of Tech Talk, tell it the URL for that source control repository that we were just looking at. And Ansible will then go and reach into that and go and discover all of the automation that I've written in there and make it available for me to start offering to my users. So that's it. It's a simple mapping. Tell Tower the URL for the source control repository. Tower will go and connect to it, discover, and make things available for me. Now, if your source control repository is private, that's fine. We can add a credential in here to go and authenticate to it. If you've got different tags or branches you want Ansible to pull off because you're doing development and production, fine, Ansible can pull different versions from different branches and tags. And that's it. That's simply the mapping that we make into source control. And so with just those couple of simple things there, so I've got a credential now and I've got my link into source control, I can now start to define the job that I'm going to make available to people as a push button capability. So let's call this job, and I've probably got an old version of this knocking about as I was testing it. Let's call it Tech Talk Live VM Create. I'm going to go and pick the project that this comes from. So this is the source control repository that I want to go and look into. So this is where I'm telling it which repository to go and look in for playbooks. And now if we go and look in the playbook drop down here, we'll see it's discovered my VMware Linux VM playbook. So this is what's in my source control repository. If I go back and look at the root of this, I've got a playbook here called Linux VM.yaml, which is my playbook to provision this, and we'll come back and have another look at this in a moment. And every time I switch tabs, it freezes. So let me just do that and come back to it. Oh, wrong tab. Can I hear you? No. Can I hear you? Got you. So what we're doing here is we're building a job definition of how this is going to run. So I want it to run in run mode, not check mode. This isn't I want this to actually enforce changes. I've picked the playbook that I want it to run. I want to map my credentials to it because I need it to talk to vCenter. So here's my Tech Talk VMware credential that we just created. I'm also going to add, let me add another credential in here. I'm going to add an SSH key so that we can do some post-deployment automation as well. So I can map multiple credentials in here and they're going to be injected into the play for me. And like I said, now I've got control over how this is going to run. I need to tell it what it should run against. In this instance, it doesn't really matter because I'm spinning up a new VM, so I don't actually need to talk to existing devices. If I was doing patches, I would need to give it a list of hosts to go and automate against, and we do that with an inventory. Not as important here for this example that we're running. And that's it. That's it. I'm just going to save that. That's our job definition. You can see here, anywhere where we've got prompt on launch, I can provide access to override options so that when I run it, you're going to be prompted to fill in certain information. I'm just going to keep this locked down for now for this simple example. So all we've done is said which source control repository to look into, grab the playbook, given it some credentials, and that's pretty much it. We've got our job available to run. And so just going back to our example here, if we go and look in source control again, and remember we've got some parameters in here where really I want to prompt the user for this information. I want to ask them VM names, memory, CPU, VM IP. So we're going to do that in Ansible Tower with what we call a survey. So we've got this add survey button here, which I can add into this job. So we're going to go and add that in here. And this is what the user is going to see when they run this job, information that they're going to be asked to input. So vmfqdn is the thing that they're going to be prompted for. And I think that variable was called VM name. And I can pick what the input's going to look like. So I'm just going to make this a text input. We're not going to do any validation for this one. That's fine. So the user is going to be prompted for a vmfqdn. They're going to be prompted for an IP address. I think the IP address is called vmip. We'll get an error if it isn't. And again, I'm just going to make it text without validation here as a simple example. We're going to prompt them for memory in megabytes. And again, this variable in my play is called memory. So if I just come back to this and make this clear, I've got a variable here called memory. That's what I'm inputting into this, come back, into these boxes here. So I've got a variable called memory. I'm going to make this multiple choice single select, so they can pick 2 gig, 4 gig, or 8 gig, and the default will make as 2 gig. Oh. So I'll add that in. And then the other one was CPU count. So how many CPUs do you want? The variable name was CPUs for this one. And again, I'll make this multiple choice single select 1, 2, 4, and we'll make 1 the default for that. So let's save that. We've now got a job defined. We've created this very simple questionnaire that users are going to fill in, and we've not done any programming or anything crazy here. This was a really straightforward to set up. So now I want to make this available to other users to consume. And so Tower's got an RBAC model built into it. It can hook into things like LDAP and Active Directory, whatever it is. So you can start to map users and groups into Ansible Tower here. And then you can start to assign permissions to them to decide what they can do. So I'm going to pick on this, this user here. I'm going to go and look at the permissions they've got. They've already got access to an old version of my job, so I'm just going to remove that. And I'm going to give them permissions to execute this job that we've just defined. So if I search for Tech Talk, and there was our live VM create job that we just defined, I'm going to give them access to execute that job. I could give them access to administrate it, but I'm just going to give them execute permissions on that job. And we'll go ahead and save that. So this user now, when they log in, should be able to see this job and execute it. So let me switch to that user in a different tab. And so I'm going to log in as Pat with my super secure Red Hat 123 password. And if we go and just look really quickly at what their view of the world is now with this RBAC model, they don't have access to any credentials. They can't do anything with credentials. They can't see them, and they don't know anything about the credentials I've got. They don't have any view of the projects. So again, that link into source control, they can't influence it, see it, don't need to know about it. What they can see is a job which they're allowed to run. They've got access to this create VM job. If I click on it, everything is grayed out in here. So they can't influence the way this job runs. They can't do anything to change it. All they can do is hit the little rocket ship to order it, and then they can fill in the questionnaire. So these were the questions that I asked, I needed to prompt them for. I'm just going to use all of the same information we used on the first run. So 2 CPUs, 2 gig of RAM, same IP and host name. I'm going to hit next on that, and we're going to go ahead and launch it. So in a moment, this job is going to go and start. It's got to pull the playbooks in from source control to make sure I've got the latest version of them. And then it's going to start executing this job for us. So we can see here, hopefully, if I've got those variables right, we'll see now how we've moved away from that command line driven way of doing things. And without actually making many changes, we've just pushed it to source control. We've made a few parameters. We've parameterized a few of we've added variables into it so we can parameterize some of this stuff. And then we've just moved credential management into Tower. And here we can see we're running the playbook. Again, if I switch away from this user to my admin user, what I have now as an admin user of this environment is a full audit control. And there we go. So I can see here now all of the jobs that are being executed through my Ansible automation platform. I can go and click on any of these individual jobs and I can see all of the output. Was it successful or not? So I can see everything that's being run. I can see the user that ordered this. So this came from Pat. I can see the variables that he passed in here. So now I know exactly what's happening. I know what's passing through this automation platform. I know how it's being used. I can help to troubleshoot any errors. And so we're starting to build this journey now where we've learnt the command line. That was easy. I've now provided a push button capability to an end user. And so without them having to know anything about it, they can press a button, fill in some information and start to request some of these assets. And we went a little bit further with this one. We went and logged into the host after we connected, and we started installing and registering to satellite and installing packages. And so, like I say, we can use Ansible to do the full end-to-end provisioning process. So I'm just going to pause at this point before we move on to the final stage of this. I don't know if there's any questions in the chat. I can't see anything. I don't know if anyone wants to shout out and ask any questions at this point. If not, I will carry on.
Yeah, no, nothing from me. Thank you.
Okay, great. So we've gone from the standalone where we're learning Ansible and getting up to speed with it. That was great, easy. We then moved into this extended mode where we put the controls around Ansible in a way that I can then start to offer this automation off to other users. And for some people, this will be enough. That might be enough to just say, look, if you want a VM, go into Tower, click this button, great. You can add simple approval steps into Tower as well, so it will pause and wait for an approval. And like I say, you can hook it all into your LDAP so that you can control when users log in, what catalog items can they see effectively, what can they order, what can they do. And it gives us all of those controls that we were missing when we just ran things from the command line. Now, this is where we get a bit of a fork in the road here with when we move to integrated, because it very much depends on your existing environment and what you've already got in place and how you do these things today. So we could look at ServiceNow integration at this point and say, right, we're going to use the ServiceNow catalog capability to provide services, handle all of that change management workflow to make sure things are approved. And then off the back of an approval, we will trigger automation via Ansible Tower's API to go and consume the actual automation itself. You may have something like Remedy. You may have some other tooling. You may not have anything at all. And so this is what I mean. This is where there's a fork in the road, where there's no single path we can go down here which will fit everyone. We're probably going to do a ServiceNow follow-on session at some point. It's certainly in the, it's not been scheduled, but it's in there as a future talk, where we'll look at specific ServiceNow integrations and how Ansible can work with ServiceNow, and we can do some of this catalog integration. For today, I want to focus on just on the Ansible automation platform and what we provide natively through our Ansible Tower, our Ansible automation subscription. So the final layer of this automation platform, like I say, we've been through the two layers at the bottom that are grayed out. We've gone through the engine and we've created our playbook. We've gone through Tower and provided this platform that then makes it easy for people to consume our automation by the click of a button or an API. The final step in this journey we're going to go on today is to look at some of the SaaS offerings we've got as part of the automation platform, and specifically our service catalog, which is there to provide more of a shopping cart experience, I guess, where you'll get kind of nice friendly tiles to click on something, maybe some additional descriptions and information. You can change things like logos depending on what the catalog item is. And we can build it into, we can build in approval workflows into that as well. So this might be for customers who don't have something like ServiceNow, or maybe don't have developers in ServiceNow that can help them write this stuff. So this is something that's very simple to leverage, and will help to provide that catalog experience if you want to go down that road. And so this is what the Automation Service Catalog is for. It's a SaaS-based offering, which is there to help you provide a layer above Ansible Tower. So if you don't want users interacting with Ansible Tower for any reason, and you want to provide them with that more kind of catalog experience, this is what the Service Catalog is there to provide. And there's two ways we can connect the connect to our catalog. So again, the Ansible Service Catalog is a SaaS-based platform, nothing for you to install. It's there, it's all provided as a SaaS offering. It lives in cloud.redhat.com, which we're going to go and take a look at the moment. On the left-hand side, we've got a direct connect approach where we're assuming that we can get from cloud.redhat.com to your Ansible Tower instance. So we're saying that your Ansible Tower instance is publicly available, maybe running in a cloud platform where I can go directly from cloud.redhat.com and make calls out to Ansible Tower, so that when someone says, give me this item, we make an API call from cloud.redhat.com to your Ansible Tower instance. And then on the right-hand side, we've got the on-premise connector option, where Ansible Tower isn't publicly available, cloud.redhat.com can't get to Ansible Tower. And so we can add a cloud connector in there, which basically reaches back out to cloud.redhat.com. So we don't need to be able to get from the SaaS offering into your data center. We can reach back out the other way and grab the automation jobs as they're passing through. Now, it is in beta or tech preview at the moment, so I'm sure it's going to go horribly wrong for me today when we try and do this, but I'm going to try and do the on-premise connector where we're going to, the data center that I'm in is behind a VPN, which it is. I can't get directly to it from cloud.redhat.com. So we're going to use this cloud connector capability to hook my Tower instance up to the SaaS offering. So, I don't know why this does. Every time I try and change tab, it freezes. So, cloud.redhat.com. If you haven't been there before, it is well worth having a look at cloud.redhat.com. This is our SaaS-based offerings, where you will see, if you're just a Red Hat Enterprise Linux customer, you will at least see things like Red Hat Insights, where you can get some help with viewing the health of your environment, looking at CVEs, and generating remediations for issues that may exist in your environment. If you're an Ansible customer, you'll obviously see the Ansible Automation platform tile in here. And there's a few offerings in here. We're obviously focusing on the service catalog capability today, but there is an automation hub, which is where you would go to find all of the certified supported content. So we're obviously doing VMware automation today. That's certified and supported in here. If you were doing Azure, again, certified and supported in here. So this is where you go to for your certified supported content. And we also have some analytics in here for giving you a view of how you're using automation across your environment. So the first thing I want to look at is the sources in here. So what we can do is we can add Ansible Tower into cloud.redhat.com as a source so that we can start to consume it. Now for the on-premise connector, you don't need to do anything in here. You run an installation playbook basically, which goes and configures all of this and connects you up to cloud.redhat.com. If you're doing the direct connect where you're gonna have a publicly available Ansible Tower instance, it's easy. Go in here, add a source called whatever, pick automation platform as the thing that you want to add in, and then give it the URL and the credentials to go and authenticate to your tower. So really not a lot in here to set this up, and I'm not going to set that up now. But we can see here my on-premise catalog is called Demo Lab, and it's currently available and connected. Fingers crossed it's actually going to work. Like I say, it's still a tech preview offering. So let's go back to the service catalog and take a look at what we've got in here. So far, all I've done is created that link. I've installed my on-premise connector. It's added my Ansible Tower as a source into this cloud.redhat.com platform. And here is my on-premise demo tower that we're looking at today. And hopefully what we'll see in here is all of the different jobs that are defined in this Ansible tower have been discovered and are made available in here as jobs that I can offer through this catalog. So again, I haven't had to do anything. I haven't configured anything. We created this Tech Talk Live VM create job during this talk. And again, I haven't logged into cloud.redhat.com and added it. It's being discovered. And so we can see I've got all of the different jobs that are available in Tower are also available in here as catalog items, basically. And so what we do is we build up a portfolio of products. So I've got a portfolio here, which is just a folder really for any products that are related to my on-premise data center. And we can add a product in here, which is basically going to be, I'm going to add in that job that we've just configured to create the VM. So if I scroll all the way down, there's our Tech Talk Live VM create job. And I'm just ticking that and I'm going to add that in. So we've successfully added that job in. We can then click on this job and edit it. So we can say, do I want to add a description in here? Do I want to change the logo here of the product? Of course, we're going to go and change the logo because that's the most interesting bit. If I can find a rel one, there we go, rel 8, let's pick that one. So there's our Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8 logo now that we've selected. I can give it a description like create VMware VM. And we can add in other information here. So if you want to add a URL in for where the documentation is for it or any support, we can add that information in there as well. So now we've got this simple catalog item. And again, we've not done anything particularly clever here other than ticking boxes. I'm now going to share this item to make it publicly available. And I'm going to pick a group of users who are allowed to consume it. So catalog users is a group defined in my instance here of cloud.redhat.com. You can call them whatever you want. And I'm saying they can order and view this catalog item. So we're going to apply that. And it should be available now as a product within cloud.redhat.com. And there it is on the far right, my Tech Talk Live VM create job. And so I'm logged in here as a as an organization administrator, as my Red Hat email account. I'm just going to switch across now to a different account where I'm a non-admin user. So I'm going to log in as this Pat Demo account. And the password is hopefully that. Yeah, that's great. So if we go into the catalog as this non-admin user, they should hopefully see the products available. And there it is. There's that VM create VM live Tech Talk job that we've just published and made available to them. Now they can go ahead and order this. Actually, what I might do is just add an approval to that. Sorry, let me just go back in here and I'll add an approval to this job. So again, if I edit this job, oh no, sorry. If I set an approval for it, I can add an approval process to this for so that when someone orders it, it doesn't just get fulfilled. I have to go and approve it. So we'll just add a very simple approval to this, which is going to send me an email and ask me to approve that. So let me jump back in as this user. I can click on this tile here, read some information about it if I'd added some additional URLs in there. And this is exactly the same prompt that we had in Ansible Tower. So again, I've not had to define this again here. This is picking all of this information up from my Ansible Tower instance. I'm adding in all the same information that we submitted earlier. And so I can go and submit this job and I see I get an order that's successfully been submitted, and I can go and look at the orders page to see what status this is in. And we can see it's an approval pending phase here. So now if I jump back in as my administrator account and go to approvals, again, I should also see that this item has been requested by Pat Harrison. It needs review. And so I can click on this item. I can look at the parameters they've specified, 2 CPUs, 2 gig of RAM. Yep, that all looks good. I'm happy to approve that request. So we can add a little comment in there to say that looks okay and approve it. And that should hopefully then kick off an automation job in our Ansible Tower instance if everything's working and going well. And so there it is. There's our job that's running now. We're just waiting for that job to kick off. And so we've provided this catalog item now in cloud.redhat.com, which is hooked into our automation platform, and users can start to drive our automation through a more kind of catalog experience than they were seeing from Ansible Tower. And we should have seen emails hitting my account if they came through. There we go. I did get a catalog request sent to my email to say the following order requires approval. So again, it's all hooked into your email, and if you're an approver, you're going to get a notification that someone's requested something and it needs approval. So I think we've reached the end of the session with a couple of minutes to spare. I'm going to just pause at this point and see if there's any questions on anything we've covered today. And hopefully we've gone through this journey. Like I say, we'll probably do a follow-up on ServiceNow, where we specifically then look at how you would hook this all into ServiceNow. But hopefully we've gone through this journey at a very high level on how we go from picking up Ansible and then making it available as a self-service item for end users. So yeah, any questions? I don't know, can't see anything in the chat, but if anyone's got any questions, please shout out.
Yes, earlier on you showed a catalogue of approved modules on the Ansible website. Are they in addition to what's in the Ansible distribution?
So they are they are potentially different and in addition to what's in Ansible 2.9. So the automation hub is effectively where you go to for supported content. So some of this will be the same as what you're already using today. So let me rephrase that. So it's a long-winded answer. So Ansible's changing. So Ansible 2.9, you install Ansible, you get Ansible plus 3,600 modules. We're changing that model. And so as of Ansible 2.10, which we don't have a release of yet in Red Hat, when you install Ansible, you don't get all of the content. You get to then pick which content do I want. And the way we do that is with something called collections. So we're now allowing vendors to release at their own cadence. Whereas before, if Azure, Microsoft wanted to add more Azure content, they would have to wait for us to release like Ansible 2.9, which might take 6 months. We were just slowing down the whole ecosystem. So now Microsoft can release the Azure content at their own cadence. Cisco can release at their own cadence. So we're decoupling the core Ansible engine from all of the modules and content, basically. So in that new world, Ansible Galaxy is the community repository for content. So if you want to go to Ansible Galaxy and install the Azure content, you can do that, but obviously you then don't have support for it. This automation hub we're looking at here, and we can look at some of the partners, is if you've got an Ansible subscription, you should really be coming here and getting your content, because if you install the content from here, that means you've got the support of Red Hat behind it all. Does that answer that question?
I think so. So when you upgrade Ansible, say to 2.11, those collections would carry over to the new Ansible?
Yeah, so the collections will work with versions as we increase it, and like I say, you're not forced down this road at the moment because Ansible 2.9 still ships with everything in it, and that's the version that we're currently on from a Red Hat perspective. When we move forward to 2.10 or 2.11, whatever we move to, the new model will be a more cut down version of Ansible, and then any additional content you want, like this content, you will install from one of these hubs or from the community hub, depending on whether it's supported or not supported software.
Presumably you then have to update that separately as well.
Yeah, so that's up to you how you want to pull this in. So if I go and click on one of these, and I'll probably click a horrible example, these are all then individually versioned. So vendors can release, so F5 obviously write this stuff, we provide the support for it with F5, and so they release at their own cadence. So even if we released Ansible 2.10 or 11, if you're still on version 1.5 of the F5 modules, great, stick with it. If you want to upgrade F5, and you can move things independently now. It's not this big kind of monolith. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, yeah. It does. I was just wondering if there were any more VMware capabilities available, but I think what's in 2.9 is probably adequate anyway these days.
Yeah, so there is a supported collection in the hub, and I can't spell VMware now. There is a supported collection in the hub, and it's this VMware REST collection. There's a change of approach to automating VMware where we're moving to this REST model where we can actually generate modules depending on your vSphere version. So it's changed basically, and it's forever changing as everything is in IT. So this is kind of the new way. The stuff in 2.9 is what I used for this demo. Works great. Going forward, this collection will grow and grow and grow, and will be the way forward.
Okay, I think that's it.
Okay. So I don't know if there's any other questions.
No, nothing from myself.
No. In which case, I think we can probably stop the recording, Mark, and close the call. Thanks everyone for joining. Hopefully that was useful.